Hello and welcome to this NDTV exclusive. It's election season and we're bringing you face to face with key players. Today we have with us Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, senior leader of the Congress, general secretary of the party in charge of Uttar Pradesh. Thanks very much indeed, Priyanka Gandhi, for talking to us. Let's start with Uttar Pradesh because that's really where you've been working. Now, all the initial ground reports, Priyanka, anecdotally and even the first opinion polls that have come out seem to suggest that this is a very much a bipolar fight. Sapa, Samajwadi Party versus BHP, Congress remains a marginal player. Agree, disagree?
Well, the thing is that in the last 2.5 years, if you look at the politics of UP, it's really the Congress party that has been fighting for the cause of the people. Whether it was Unnao, whether it was Sonbhadra, whether it was during CA-NRC, it was really the Congress party that came out on the streets and fought. I think everybody in UP is aware of that. Now, electorally, what the outcome is really, your guess is as good as mine, but we are definitely putting up the best fight that we have in us.
Okay, but it has been a challenge, right? Given the state of the party as it was over the past few years, from when you took over, give us a sense of how acute the crisis was when you came into the mix. I'll ask you where you stand today, but when you came in, how bad was it?
So, well, in Uttar Pradesh, we haven't been in power for over 30 years.
Yes.
When I was sent as the in charge of Uttar Pradesh, we had an executive committee of 520 and more people. It was difficult for me to wrap my head around that because I thought, okay, if this is the executive that is meant to actually be the operational lot of
huge.
people,
yeah.
how are we going to even establish responsibility and answerability in this executive? So, I mean, that's just one example. I think.
And in terms of the ground,
I will say that despite not being in power for 31 years, there were people on the ground who had, been still our Congress workers, old workers who had been there carrying the flag no matter what.
No, but there may have been individual instances. But overall, would you concede that, as they say, Zameen pe Congress?
No,
Overall, I would
concede that our organization was extremely weak 2 years ago when I went there, which is why for the last 2 years, our primary focus was to rebuild our organization there. You didn't hear much about it publicly.
Yes.
But we did a lot of internal work. We rebuilt not just the district level, but the block level, the Nyay Panchayat level and the Gram Panchayat level.
Okay.
We did training programs, 2-day training programs for over 1 lakh workers. Today we have an organization in every village, which was unheard of when I went there.
You actually
claim
that, and it's not in paper. It's not on paper.
It's not a claim. It's not a claim, and it's not on paper. Yes, of course there are. We have a 3-tier verification process that we are using.
Okay.
And in that, of course, there is a certain percentage which comes out to be on paper and where you get it wrong. But the fact that we actually have people, that we have their contacts, we have their numbers, we can mobilize in every village is absolute fact. And proof of it is actually that the rallies you saw in Gorakhpur and Banaras were organization driven. So we employed a completely different method of mobilizing for the rallies.
Right.
We told our Gram Panchayat guys that, look, you bring 3 people. The Nyay Panchayat, you bring 1 jeep. The district Panchayat, the district head, you bring 5 jeeps.
Right.
So it wasn't the usual practice, which is X leader will bring 5,000 people, Y leader will bring 10,000 people. It was actually a mobilization that took place from the ground. Okay. And in a way, it was our test to see whether our organization was actually what we believed it to be.
Okay, so you're saying that the crowds that came for those events suggest that there has been a revival. But Priyanka, I do want to ask you though, that who is going to take responsibility for allowing things to come to that path? If you look at the Congress's numbers, and you're aware of this, but for our viewers, your vote share has barely crossed 10% in 15 years. You were down to 7 seats in the last assembly election. Rahul Gandhi couldn't win the Amethi seat in 2019. Surely this is the period where you, as in your family, Rahul, Sonia Gandhi, yourself, you're all in charge. Surely there is some accountability of how things came to this pass.
Nobody shirks accountability or responsibility for things. And I think my brother has time and again said that. what we have to understand about the Congress party in Uttar Pradesh is that the decline of the Congress party in Uttar Pradesh isn't something that happened in the last 5 years or 6 years. It is something that actually began at the time in the 90s when they made the first alliance with Kanshi Ramji. That is when the decline actually began. So it's been a long time. I would say that, look, despite all that,
Yes.
despite the 30 years of not being in power, despite a weak organization, you're talking about us today. And we are fighting today. And we have managed to build our organization to the village level today.
Okay.
Which means that hard work and complete commitment to actually rebuilding your organization with honesty actually helps.
It's not very late. I mean, it's you came in to the picture in 2019, which some would say, I mean, that's late.
Well, I mean, there's a time for everything, and things happen when they're meant to happen. So yes, I guess I think you asked me this question when I was 20 years old.
Right. When are you going to jump in? But okay, so you are building on the ground, but the lack of a leadership structure or a face in Uttar Pradesh remains a challenge. I just saw that you had a press conference where you said, when they were asked, "Koi chehra kaun hai?"
I was being a bit tongue in cheek.
But you said that you are the chehra.
No, well, I said, I mean, look, because I'm asked this question, every second question is the same question.
Yes.
Now, clearly, I am the General Secretary of Uttar Pradesh, and in most ways, between me and Ajay Lalluji, who's the Pradesh Adhyaksh, and Mona ji, who's the CLP leader, we are leading the effort in Uttar Pradesh.
You say your face is on every poster.
It is. So, but, I mean, whether now officially we have to say that this is the face or that is the face, I mean, it's unlikely that we're going to do that.
But you're saying it's safe to assume that you are the sort of
no, it's not
face
safe.
of
no, you
of the
can't.
Congress?
You can't put words in my mouth.
Okay.
I'm not saying that it's safe to assume. I'm saying that I am the General Secretary of Uttar Pradesh. The responsibility for Uttar Pradesh is mine, and I'm dealing with it.
Why aren't you fighting the elections then?
Well, you don't know yet whether I am or not. So.
Okay. Is that an open question?
It's an open question for now.
So you might fight the election if it comes to it.
I may well.
Okay. Have you given any thought to where you might want to fight from, or?
I've left this discussion for a little bit later. So when we do have the discussion, and if at all I decide to fight, I will let you know.
That's interesting. Can we assume from that you are also, in a sense, positioned as the Congress's chief ministerial candidate in UP?
No, I don't think you should make assumptions like that. I have clearly said that that is not the case.
Okay.
I have clearly said just now also to you. Of course, I did. I made a tongue-in-cheek remark at the press conference, but no, I don't think it's fair to assume that.
But at least we can say that you are considering fighting these elections. That's not. We wouldn't be wrong in saying that.
No. And the discussion is on amongst us internally in the party in Uttar Pradesh. And when we come to some consensus about it, we'll let you know.
Is there a possibility, as some have suggested, that you might be fighting against Yogi Adityanath?
No,
that's not on the cards.
No.
If I may ask, just as a provocation, why not?
Well, until you've mentioned it now, actually I haven't considered it.
Okay. Because often it's seen as one way of trying to establish presence, right? Like Chandrasekhar Azad, Bhim Army, very small party, nascent. He's taking on Yogi in Gorakhpur, sends out a message. Is that something?
But there are many ways of sending out the message. I've been taking Yogi on for the last 2.5 years. So that's my message.
Okay. On the message though, you've targeted the Yogi Sarkar, you've pointed out their many infirmities. The BJP says, look, we are actually doing really well. We've got a slew of welfare schemes we've rolled out. Women, which is a big part of your campaign, are feeling much safer. We've locked up all the gundas. To that you would say what?
To that I would tell them to come and look around them and see what the actual situation is. Every woman I speak to says she's unsafe. She is not feeling safer. And most of if you look at all the high profile cases, whether it was Unnao, Shahjahanpur, whatever it was, you actually find the government and the administration and the police taking the side of the perpetrator of the crime. You often find them vilifying the woman who is the victim of the crime. I don't think that can make any woman feel safe.
So this huge... pitch by the government, by the BJP, that UP is safer now. हमने सब गुंडों को बंद कर दिया है. The era of Bahubalis is over.
I mean, UP at the moment is run by a bunch of mafias. That is the truth. The government knows it as well as anybody else does. Everybody knows it. There's a mafia for everything.
For example?
For example, there's even a mafia for entrance to government jobs, for the exams. There's a mafia for everything. Everybody in UP knows that. And I don't think anybody in UP actually believes that the security for women has improved in the last 5 years.
And you're saying this is the feedback?
I'll give you the example of the now rape victim who was allegedly raped by an MLA. The whole country saw what happened to her. She tried to fight her case, and there was an accident in which her lawyer was killed, her uncle is in jail, her father was taken into police custody and beaten to death. Take the case of Arun Valmiki in Agra, who was accused of a petty theft by the police. 18 people from his family were picked up, put into jail, beaten mercilessly. I met his brother they placed the leg of the chair on his hands and sat on it. They broke his bones. They beat up his wife who has a 1-month-old child. That was what the police did. And the administration took no action until we made a noise about it. So the police and the administration, even in Lakhimpur Kheri, it was very clear that had there not been so much political noise about it, it would have been brushed under the carpet. The FIRs were not being filed.
Right.
The postmortems were not given to the families. That to me doesn't sound like a government that is controlling crime. It sounds like a government that is actually encouraging it.
And that's partly why you've also come up with this Ladki Hoon, Lad Sakti Hoon campaign, which is targeted heavily at women, especially young women. Can I just ask though, who came up with that slogan? Was that
actually we came up with this slogan between me and the guys in my office.
Okay.
About 2.5 years ago, actually.
Oh, 2.5 years ago?
Yeah.
But you've rolled it out now.
Yeah, we were wanting to at that time run a campaign for women, and we had brainstormed a little bit, and we came up with this slogan, and we used it now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So on one hand, the Yogi Sarkar claims one of their powerful messages is that they've cracked down on crime and gundai and all of that, which of course you've challenged. But the other big claim is that Yogi Adityanath says this is a 80-20 election. Right now, of course, one could say that's a deeply divisive and sectarian statement to make, that it's basically majority versus minority. But what is the Congress's counter to that when he says something like that?
Our counter to it is that he should be talking about the percentage of unemployed youth in UP. He should be talking about what he's going to do to develop the state. He should be talking about how he's going to improve education in the state, health services in the state. He should be talking about how he's going to help small industries and businesses to stand back up after the lockdowns and how they have suffered during COVID and demonetization, etc. I don't think we truly believe in the Congress party in Uttar Pradesh that the discourse has to change. And we have to try to force that discourse to change. And when you talked about bringing women into the discourse, partly that is the reason. The reason is that there has to be some change in the debate and discourse.
No, fair enough.
And when we brought women up,
yes,
once we did, they could not be ignored. Once we did, even the Prime Minister had to have an all-women's rally for the first time in his political career.
Considerable amount of traction that the Gandhis have amongst the ordinary worker. Is that in simple terms?
Well, I would put it a slightly different way. I would say that a lot of the workers that I speak to, and I'm talking about block level workers, district level workers, I'm not talking about the big and fancies. I'm talking about the ordinary Congress worker.
Yes.
A lot of them do have this feeling that they say that, look, we trust you. We have faith that you will do what's right for our party. We can't necessarily say that for other people,
Okay.
And perhaps that is also a shortcoming on our part. Perhaps they need to develop that trust in other people as well. I mean, and I don't think on our part, if you ask my mother or my brother or me, we have any, sort of idea
Desire.
that we are, or any entitlement to being leaders of the Congress party. I don't think so. I mean, I certainly don't. I know my brother doesn't. I know my mother doesn't.
So if it
I mean,
comes
we'd be only too happy if somebody else rose from the ranks and everybody had faith in them and wanted them to lead.
and you would be
Absolutely
able
no
to step
problem.
aside and let them take over?
Why not? If that's what the party wants.
Okay, because you did have...
If that's what the majority of the workers of the Congress party wanted,
Right.
we no issue with it at all.
In conclusion, though, as you go into these elections, you did experiment, especially when you're on weak ground. You often go for alliances. You tried that in 2017. This time you're going alone. What was the big lesson from 2017? What do you think went wrong with that alliance with Sapa? That this time around
Actually,
you feel
interestingly, the big...
it wasn't necessary.
There were many operational difficulties with that alliance. So that was the operational part of it, but the biggest lesson actually was to go it alone, because as long as we were running a campaign on our own steam, we had reached a certain point in UP which would have actually benefited our party, and perhaps in hindsight it was a mistake to go into that alliance.
Really, you think you would have done better if you hadn't fought with them?
Well, we had certainly would have built our party better.
Okay, because their view was the exact opposite. Their view was that the Congress pulled the alliance down.
That's their view.
That's their view.
Yes.
Anyway, Priyanka Gandhi, thank you so much for talking to us, and all the very best with your campaign.
Thanks
very much.
Thanks
indeed.
a lot.